How a poet becomes a ninja, finds balance, and tries to save the world. That's my lofty title. And how you can too. So I have a lot of fun with being called a ninja poet. I love when people show up to readings. Let me back up. That's me poeting. Some of you don't know me. I should have started there. I'm a poet. I'm also sometimes a ninja. And so that makes me a ninja poet, you see? And I love being a ninja poet. It cracks me up, and I don't take it too seriously. But I love when people show up to my readings. Yeah, probably the person who's wearing that shirt. And I may have become a little bit obsessed, okay? I admit it. I admit it, but it's really fun for me to live in this world. But what people don't know is that this combination of ninja and poet has provided me with some balance in my life, and is precisely what I want to talk about. I have this theory that if you can find balance in your own lives, you can begin to see imbalances in the world around you, and then you can start to fix them. And so let me back up and tell you how I achieved balance. That's my family. I grew up sort of with balance. My mother was born in Syria, and she raised us to be Muslim, and she was very strict. And my father was an alcoholic, a Korean War veteran, a total redneck, to be honest. And I was torn between two worlds, between godly and ungodly, and it was challenging, to say the least. But I had my brother, and you'll notice his finger there. He's the one in this red and stripes. So, what looks like a picture-perfect, multicultural, blended family, actually, we harbored behind this veneer a great deal of pain and agony and torture. Now, growing up, I had my brother, and I was so happy that I did. But the difference between the two of us is that I grew up with an American name, Sam, and I grew up with lighter skin. And my brother, he had darker skin, and his hair was a hot mess, man, and he had these huge glasses, and he had a name that got caught in people's throats. His name was Ahmed, and he was bullied relentlessly for it. And I remember in our apartment complex one day, we were riding our bikes, and these three kids came up to us, and one goes up to my brother, and he goes, Ahmed. And it was kind of funny for a second. Then he balled up his fist, and he sucker punched my brother right in the gut. And my brother fell to the ground, and he just collapsed. And I froze, man. I should have done something, but I didn't do anything. I just started to cry. And then the bullies turned to me, and they said, "What the hell are you crying for, man? Ain't nobody hit you." And they were right, nobody hit me, but I felt the pain of my brother so deeply. I still feel it today. I went home that day, and I started to do push-ups, a lot of push-ups. I started trying to get stronger and stronger, and I found this old weight bench in a neighbor's garage, and I started lifting and lifting. By the time I was 13 or 14, I was benching hundreds of pounds. And I realized, symbolically now as I look back as a poet, I was lifting so much pain off of my chest. It was not about the weight. It was about my family crumbling in divorce. And so by the time I got to my sophomore year of high school, I was strong enough and quick enough to join the football team. And that began to separate me from my family. But I needed that because that family of football players was really my team. And I discovered that those coaches were like fathers. And as my home life was crumbling, that team became everything. I was becoming a jock. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying I was that good. But I was strong, and I was stronger than most linemen, but I had lost my balance. And then fast forward a few years, senior year high school English, Mrs. Podgorski, she gives us this writing assignment. She says, write about something a place that inspired you. And people wrote about Disneyland, and I wrote about, whatever. And I instead wrote about this space underneath my parents' bed. And it was just big enough that I could go under there and hide or read or play. And sometimes my mom would chase me with a wooden spoon and I'd dive under there. And she couldn't get me, right? And I loved that spot. And then the teacher said, would anybody like to share? And I thought I wrote a funny story. And so I raised my hand. I didn't know that that moment would change my life forever. I started to read in class. I got to this part in a story where I said, my parents' bed is no longer inspiring because they don't sleep in it anymore. And I lost it. I totally started to cry. Kind of like now. Because you never get over that pain. And the girls in the class went, oh. And the boys in the class teased and sneered. And my teacher, she came to me and she could have said anything. She could have said, I'm sorry, it's going to be okay. But she came to me and she kneeled down and she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, Sam, you are a writer. And that completely catapulted me in this whole other realm. And sorry, NFL, okay? You almost had me, okay? But my life went into a different direction, and I took that very seriously, and I started to write and read, and I went to college, and I majored in English, and I started to publish poems, and then I got my Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing, and then I got this glorious opportunity to come to Modesto Junior College and teach. That's right. What an opportunity. What an opportunity to come teach here. And so I've been teaching poetry for a long time, and I started publishing books, and I started hosting poetry slams, and every year 600 people show up to the State Theater, and they listen to this chorus of brilliant, diverse voices from all across the country who come here to read to us. And I know how these slams and these readings have elevated our community because they've gave us things to talk about, right? They've challenged us in many ways. And I've been a servant of poetry for a long time, and I've helped give young people voices, these marginalized young people. I've given them platforms to speak, and I know how important poetry was to me, and so I know how important I could make it to them. But in my relentless pursuit of poetry, I started wondering about that little athlete inside of me. Where did he go? Does he even lift, brah? You know? And then my daughter and I, we were home one day and we were watching television. The show comes on and it's called American Ninja Warrior. And all these people are jumping around, they're super strong, and we're enthralled. And then my daughter turns to me and she says, Dad, can you do that? And of course I said yes. Because no father wants his daughter to know that he's not strong enough, man. And my mind was convinced that I could do all that stuff. But my body was like, oh, hell no. That's me. That guy ain't climbing nothing. So I gave up my dreams is what I'm saying. But then I find myself one day in a yoga class, and pretty accidental. And the teacher says, I want you to get into a tree pose. And then she demonstrated, and so I had to sort of balance on one leg and try to stand and bring my hands up like branches, and I was falling and stumbling, and I couldn't do it, and I was staring at myself in the mirror like, why, man? And then she said this. She said, if you're having trouble balancing, try to focus on something that is not yourself. Try to focus on something that is not. So I stopped looking at myself in the mirror and all the imperfections, and I focused on this little crack in the floor, in the parquet floor of the yoga studio, and I started to feel it. Right? And then I found it. In that moment, I found balance. And I realized that this is it. My mind, the poet part of me was like, dude, you're a tree, man. Right? And then the athlete was like, oh, you're strong too. And it was this huge aha moment. I realized in that moment, if I could do both, if I could be a servant of poetry and also work out, then I would find my balance. Okay? And yeah. Yeah. But here's the problem with that. Here's the problem. I was married with 3 kids and a full-time job and stacks of papers, and I was doing poetry slams all the time. How the hell am I going to find time to work out in order to train hard enough to be a ninja warrior, man? But I realized after yoga, I felt pretty good. And I went home and I felt grateful that I had a family to come home to. And I think I remember even doing the dishes. Like, what is wrong with me? What is happening? And then I thought, you know what? We don't do certain things that we love or want to do because it feels selfish. We feel guilty. So then I thought, we need to redefine that, okay? So here's my definition. It said, doing something for yourself is not selfish if it contributes to you being a better person to others. And that's a big if. Thank you. That's a big if, okay? If it doesn't contribute you to helping anybody, then it is selfish, okay? But if you take some time, like this is what happens with life. We forget, we have so many responsibilities that we forget these creative, wonderful parts of ourselves that we left behind. We stop playing piano, we stop running, we stop working out, we stop painting, and all these wonderful creative things we used to do because we don't have time for them, man. But you don't take time, you make time. And so I made time. I woke up a little early, I went to bed a little bit late, and I worked out, and I worked out, and I worked out, and wouldn't you know it, out of 77,000 people who applied to the show last year, I was one who got on. And hey, yeah. I'm not saying I won $1 million. I'm not saying I was the best American Ninja poet. I am the best American Ninja poet. I'm just not the best American Ninja warrior. But this is not the pinnacle of my career, right? This was just an awesome example of when I found balance. I was able to write and work out. And because I achieved this balance, I could see imbalances in the world more clearly. And so I started to bring that to my teaching. Right? I'm a teacher first, even more than an American Ninja warrior. And so I started going into classrooms a little more relaxed. I'd have a little bit more fun, right? And I could notice that students needed help, not grammatical help, like real help. Like a student would show up and say, I can't take the test today because my babysitter didn't show up. And because I was balanced, I felt that pain, man. And I said, you bring that baby. You bring that baby to class, right? Because thank you. I mean, she's struggling with balance in her whole life. I think this embodies that, right? And so my teaching started to change because I felt this glorious, wonderful balance in my life, writing and working out. I wanted to bring that and share that, and I could see the challenges that students were facing. And in teaching, it's a fairly imbalanced power structure, right? The teacher's in charge, man. Students just do what we want you to do, and we control you through our grades and our red pen. And I was a grumpy teacher. I was a very grumpy teacher. And I would get really pissed off when students' margins, man, were like 1.5 inches instead of 1 inch, right? And a lot of teachers are like this. They care more about the width of students' margins than the students living in those margins, right? They care more about the surface level problems in a paper than the deep problems of the student who wrote those papers, man. And I'm not saying I'm not going to cover topic sentences and develop. We will. But let's look at the whole. We'll get there. But let's talk about the whole student first. And so I started changing my curriculum. I thought, you know what? Let me write letters to my students, tell them about my life challenges, and let's see if they'll share back. Okay? And they did. And here are some excerpts. After losing our home, we jumped from house to house, and at some point, we lived in our truck. I still remember the day cops came into my house to arrest my father in front of me. I was in the 3rd grade. I did a line of meth when I was 16 and continued until I was 24 before I went to prison for 5 years. That student's right there. So, how can I continue to teach punctuation when these students are dealing with so much adversity? I will get to punctuation, I promise you, but I'm going to teach a whole student first. I'm going to empower them and encourage them and inspire them to find their balance. And even if you're not a teacher, you are going to find your balance. And when you do, you're going to see imbalances in the world. And so when you see an old man on the street, you're going to say hello at the least and maybe buy him a damn cup of coffee. Have a conversation. You're both going to benefit from that. If you have balance, you're going to love your family more, a lot more, because you're not going to resent them anymore. Because you're doing what you need to do to be a better person. And if you have balance, you're going to enjoy your friends. And when they call you, you're not going to say you're busy, because you're going to realize that they need you. And you're going to rejoice in that. If you have balance, you're going to parent better. You're going to parent a lot better, and you're going to recognize in your kid's eyes when he says, Dad, I want to play chess. It's not about chess at all. He needs his dad, and he wants to hang out. And when they want to watch movies and it's a Western, damn it, we're eating chili out of some cans and wearing cowboy hats. And if you have balance, your marriage will improve, and she will be the balance that shapes your entire life, and you will check in with her and you'll say, babe, how are you doing? It ain't about me all the time. How are you doing? And she'll say, thanks for asking. And you'll date her and you'll love her. And if you have balance, finally, your attitude will change. We live in Modesto. Yeah. Hold on. This is the murder, meth, auto theft capital of the world. Okay? We're the least educated city in America, but that's only half the story. The other half is we have TED Talks, man. We have art and culture here. We have poetry slams here. We have dance and opera here. Damn it, Modesto gave birth to George Lucas, and George Lucas gave us Star Wars. So we are the galaxy far, far away. So if we have balance, our entire attitudes will change, and that makes this place better. So please, when we find our own balance, and I pray for this, for all of you, we begin to see imbalances in the world and discover that we have the power to make things right again. Thank you.